Okay, we are live. Okay, jump right in here. Um, Welcome back to the Think Tank Live. I'm Travis, and if you're new here, here's what we're about in one line. We're upgrading how America chooses its leaders so you can finally vote for you. The system is rigged. Big money and party gatekeepers decide who's electable before you ever see a ballot. So we're building something completely different, a citizen-owned, no corporate control, where every candidate gets a fair shot and you can actually find leaders who represent you. That's what we're here for. Better choices, your choices. Follow us so you don't miss what's coming. And if you want in on what we're building, go to hub.futureis.org. The link is in bio. All right, let's plug in.
Awesome. So today we're talking about a story out of Wales and what their parliament is doing. This really caught our attention. They are attempting, they've had multiple iterations of trying to legally define political deception and ban misleading statements. So they're proposing real penalties for politicians who deliberately lie, all the way to the extent of removing them from office. So they're trying to build on ways to restore faith in politics as well as trust in politicians. So Travis, what did you when you first saw that and heard about that story? What was your reaction to it?
Um, I mean, it's just ridiculous that this isn't already built into our systems. Like, making sure that there's accountability with politicians, that they're actually honest. And like this idea as it's being, articulated and shared, it's coming off as this like super radical idea to make sure politicians aren't lying. Like, and it's so crazy. It's like we're being trained and expecting lying as part of a politician's job. Well, they're a politician, they have to lie. Like, of course you can't not let them lie, but it's like the bar is just so low, and that's kind of how we got to where we are today with like loads of misinformation and lying politicians and whatnot. um like even at a young age, like politicians are one of the main like evils of our world, of like the bad things, the bad parts of our society. Like you learn that as a young age. And but it's crazy. It's like politician and liar are like synonymous. um so this should be like an obvious thing that candidates shouldn't lie, politicians shouldn't lie, but it's like absurd to say to hold them accountable to something like that. So it's just crazy.
Something that stuck out to me, Travis, was it seems to be the government trying to restore that faith rather than a citizen push. Can you talk about why that is so radical? Why this is so radical in the nature of democracy, especially in the current political age that we're in?
Yeah, I guess like it's just we're in a stage of like no consequences, no reason to stop. It always boils down to consequences. That's a lot of what we've been talking about lately. Like, but if there's no consequence, and like your promises are what get you votes, but then you don't even have to deliver on those promises. So you just
Hmm.
promise what the world wants to hear, and that's all you got to do. So really it's the system rewards it. You could promise whatever you want in order to get your voters, and then do whatever once you're enacted. I mean, if the more people like realize, like go back to the original promises of a candidate and then what they're doing today, it's like there's like zero correlation between them. So it's like it's just like they could promise anything they want, and then it's like completely removed from history what they originally promised, and we never refer back to that. We'll get into why like all different parts play into it. Media, party leaders, all the whole system plays a part in this, which we'll get into in a bit. Um but um and it's not even like politicians are uniquely bad people, but like the system, like it's built to kind of force them into this corner where they have to promise the world in order to get the votes. If somebody was gonna be honest about their promises, then there'd be a lot less things they could genuinely promise to enact. So they have to give big promises, or the other guy's gonna win. And then there's no accountability. So you would need the accountability first before you'd get them to curb the line, because otherwise it's like you compete for who's the best liar right now, basically.
Absolutely. And going back to your point of, at least in US rhetoric, politician and liar are synonyms often. I think a lot of people who tune into our program really feel that. And you just really cross your fingers and hope that your politician is the one doing less of the lying. Um, so, why do you think that we just accept this, right? How many decades have we talked about politicians and being liars in this country? And when did lying become such a part of the job description of being a politician?
Yeah, so that we're gonna go into the whole like pattern of all this, but I would assume originally there was a lot more honesty, but then it kept upping the ante, that like you get bigger and bigger promises, and then accountability declined over the decades. Again, that's what we're gonna get into the next segment. um but like now that there's so like as there's less and less accountability, it leaves room for bigger and bigger promises, and then there's the you're competing with your lies against the other. Like, you have to have better lies than the other candidate's lies, to gain the votes. But then there's no cap because there's no accountability afterwards. um so it just kind of grew. I guess election after election got worse and worse as just democracy in general declined and accountability declined. And like the promises had to keep heightening to you have to beat the other candidate. You also kind of have to beat the previous election cycle. You have to be better than the last cycle. So I guess it's just like, it's weird because it's almost like the bar keeps getting higher in rhetoric, but then the actual what you actually get in the real
Right.
world is declining. So that's
That's
that.
crazy. That's a great way to say it,
Yeah.
Travis. So yeah, so in the next section we're about to go into, we'll talk about why this lying part of being a politician is not an individual mistake that is a siloed whoopsie daisy, and how it's really baked into the current system. So I'm going to reset the room and then we'll get right into that. So if you're just tuning in, Think is upgrading how America chooses its leaders. We cut through the typical left versus right conversation to ask one simple question: does this leader serve power, or do they serve you? And that's the lens that we approach civics with. If this resonates with you, share the stream and check out what we're building at hub.futureis.org. So let's plug back into the conversation. Um, so we've been talking about why lying has become so normalized in politics, but there is a deeper question here. Why does it keep working? What actually is broken in the system? And if we can go into that, Travis.
Yeah. So I guess I would start with the a big part of it's really about the media. So originally there was a big separation. Like, the media was nonpartisan, not very minimal, if not non-political. Like, their lens was just like telling the objective reality of what's going on. So originally, there was actual journalism happening. And so if a candidate, or I said a politician, once they're elected, if they didn't fulfill their promises, journalists would speak out on that. And if they weren't, like, basically the journalists would hold them accountable. So the American people can read the news, and it would say like, oh, this person, they're failing to, they said they're going to fix the economy, but the economy is not doing well, and they said they're going to do this and it's not doing well. And so that's how it used to be for a while. Then what happened over time is that both there was a consolidation of journalism. So like the big guys, the big guns, end up buying out all the other journalists. So now you have, like, on TV space, it's like 90% of TV media is owned by 6 companies. Luckily, we have the internet, and that's where independent journalists are living right now. But so you have the consolidation of journalists and media. But then the biggest problem that happened is the media ended up becoming, like, basically getting in bed with a party. So you have like Fox on the right, you have CNN on the, I guess, on the left. They're kind of getting mixy right now, but like, so each one has their party allegiance. So the left has like MSNBC, yada yada. um so now where we stand is like, if you're the liberal media, if you have a liberal president, they're doing great, the economy is doing great, and people are happy. If it's the candidate, if you're the media and the opposite party is in office, then the economy is doing horrible, people are upset, and things are breaking down. So like they don't actually give you the truth anymore. And this, again, this is establishment media. I'm not talking about independent journalists. I'm talking about the establishment media: CNN, MSNBC, Fox, all ABC, all the main TV media empires. Again, boils down to like 6 companies in total, even if they have different names. But so that's the biggest part, is that, so ultimately, if the candidate, if those in power is the same party, they're doing amazing no matter what the truth is, and then vice versa. Yes, there's different complexities there, but that oversimplifying it, that is exactly how it is right now. And that got worse and worse, because like the parties learned how to kind of, they don't own the media, but they've learned how to like they've learned how to like play the power game. And again, both sides did this. Actually, ironic to some people would think that Obama was one of the ones that, like, he would threaten media that, hey, if you don't show me nicely, I'm going to cut you out of this big meeting we're having, or this big event we're doing. I'm not going to let you report on this, and like you're not allowed to have your reporters inside this convention. So he is like, and I'm sure it happened even before that. I'm not like pulling up like detailed research on this, but generally both sides learn to like play power games with the media, that, hey, you have to show me nice, you have to show me in a good light, or else you're not allowed in. So that was part of it. There's a lot of different layers to it, but ultimately it's just the media being more and more in bed with the establishment is a huge factor.
So what we're talking about isn't even just, oh, there's good, honest politicians. We just have to identify them and lift those individuals up. It's really about, we're in a system that does not require honesty, does not require merit over money. What would you say to that, Travis?
Yeah, totally. So that's why with us, I think we're calling for a whole new system, a citizen-owned system. Mostly like pretty much all digital. But yeah, so for example, what we're looking for is, instead of the mainstream media of 6 companies being expecting them to hold them accountable, we have to acknowledge that they're not going to hold them accountable. So we're building networks of like independent media, as well as these politician report cards, things like that. We're going to go more into that in the next segment. But yeah, the system of today does not have any accountability mechanisms in the system. So the media does not call out, again, if they're it's all party alliances. That's everything is just so ultra partisan these days. So if they're the same party, it's unless they do something like hugely illegally corruptible, and even that is questionable that they even call that out these days if they're on the same party line. But the sliminess and stuff does not get called out. The other side calls it out, but then they call that to too far, that even when the person's doing, whether they're doing something good or bad, the opposite party is going to say bad stuff. So then so if it's 100% always bad if it's the opposite party, and then it's 100% good if it's the same party, then there's literally no accountability. So so that's the media. Then the party leaders, they're not holding anyone accountable, because they're not accountable themselves. They're all lying, essentially. Like most, not 100%, but most candidates have most of what they're pretending to promise is not really what they're intending to do. So they're all, they're not going to call each other out. They're not even going to call each other out in the right way across party lines. They say, hey, look at the money you're taking from this place. As soon as they break that open, they could just turn their finger. Well, you on the other side, look at the money you're taking. And so they don't want to play that game, because both sides have their conflicts of interest. So they're not going to call one another's conflicts. Um, so yeah, so in a nutshell, the political system as it stands right now does not have accountability mechanisms in it. Purely partisan lines. You're doing great if you're in my party. You're doing horrible if you're not in my party. And so that's what's feeding this problem.
Awesome. And if you're watching this and you're thinking, yeah, I voted for that one guy or gal that one time because of this awesome promise that they said they would give to us. So if you can recall what that promise was, we'd love to hear it in the chat. Drop that in the chat. And as that populates, we'll come back to that. Um, we're going to shift now to our next segment about what Fink and citizen architects are building. Before we do that, we're going to reset the room. If you are tuning in, welcome. We are Fink, and we are upgrading how America chooses its leaders. We cut through the noise of left versus right, and we ask one simple question. Does this leader serve power, or do they serve you? And that is the lens, and that is what we're building around. So if this resonates with you, we'd love it if you shared the stream, and definitely go check out hub.futureis.org. That is where you can plug in and start contributing today. So let's bring it back to the conversation. So we've identified the problem, right? Lying works because there's no accountability consequences built into the system, right? There's no there's no harm in it. But here's where it gets interesting. That Wales article that we were talking about before is trying to fix this problem through the law, through legal measures. Travis, why don't you think that is the appropriate measure? Or, if you do or do not, using the legal system to implement the accountability?
Well, it's probably the right measure for Wales. The problem with us is like we're so deep in the conflicts of interest that if you're going to do this legislatively, especially from the federal level, it's going to be impossible. There's no way that today's Congress of either party would support stuff like this. There's been bills that have been presented to Congress all the time about like more transparency of money in politics, curbing money in politics, cutting stock market trading in Washington, and they get like 6 to 10 signatures out of 438, 538, including Senate. So it's just not feasible today. So what we would do, the heart of what our mission is all about is work with the system as it stands today. Everything that we're looking to fundamentally change the entire system without ever making any not like maybe in a decade or two from now, but fundamentally changing the entire system without direct legislative change. And the key to that is building a system where the American people can see the transparency, see where these candidates are lying and not lying, really allow the good candidates to rise to the top. Because we could do all that without legislative change, so we're, like, the end goal of what we're building is digital democracy, which will be a one-stop shop that showcases all the candidates equally, politician report cards that'll show their conflicts of interest and their consistency on promises. So without legislative change, we can show you how honest a candidate is, where do they genuinely stand on their promise, are they fulfilling their promises. Um so we want to recognize that legislative change can't happen yet. Like, it's kind of this chicken or the egg. First, we need better candidates elected. Once there's better candidates, then legislative change would be possible. But right now, there's tons of wonderful reforms out there trying to do great changes, and it's just not going to happen. It hasn't been happening for a while. It might have used to, but now the point that we are at with money in politics and just the lack of accountability, it's just not going to happen. Maybe here and there on state level in interactions, but not federally. So what we're talking about is, building a communication system directly with the citizens, and then giving them the objective information they need to make better choices. Because at the end of the day, all that matters is if we could elect better candidates, everything changes. So, we don't need to push the legislation. We just need to connect people, get people a little bit on more of a same page using technology and digital organizing, and get people to pick better candidates. And by better, we mean it could be better Republicans, better Democrats, get third parties, independents, whatever America wants. We're not pushing anyone in one certain direction. It's just a matter of adding an up-down lens of like, are they truly going to serve me, and they're down serving and serve the actual people? Or are they up serving, have conflicts of interest, they lie, they have big donors and all that stuff. So that's really what makes the biggest difference. So even if it's like half Democrat, half Republican, but they're mostly all more citizen serving and people and actually care about their voters, then we would see some massive change in the right direction.
So if the route for the U.S. Is legislative reform, and we can't wait on that, right? That takes, gosh, it's already taken decades and decades to attempt to fix it. So what's the alternative to waiting on legislative change?
Well, pretty much what we are just saying just now. So we're building this new system. So connecting people directly to this new system and changing. It's really about upgrading voter habits and how people choose better, like make better decisions for themselves. And a lot of people are waking up to that more than ever. More people identify as independent rather than a Democrat or Republican, because they're realizing, like, sure there's going to be a lesser of two evils. We would fight forever going over which one's the worst evil, but we all feel like there's one worse than the other. But like, that's not good enough. The bar is just so low that we're not going to move the needle forward if, like, it's kind of like what South Park a long time ago is between a douche and a turd for president. So people are waking up that both parties are part of the problem, that like you as a voter and those that are leading the party are not fighting for the same thing. They're going to promise that they're fighting for what you want, but they're not going to do with it what you're asking them to do. So what we're doing is really, really helping make that distinguishment of, like, there might be Democrats and Republican grassroots candidates that will fight for you legitimately, but we want to help you identify that not all Republicans are treated equally, not all Democrats are treated equally. There's good ones and there's bad ones. There's ones that genuinely want you to have a better life and better economy, and there's others that don't give a crap and they just want to rise to power and feed whoever gives them the most money. And so we want that to be an easier understanding and a way to identify that yourself, make your own decision. You decide left versus right, but then helping you decide to pick a more legitimate candidate that's down serving and serves the people.
And part of this is, we've talked about a little before, it's transferring more power into the hands of the citizens to be that watchdog. Because right now, right, we talk about the media is not being the watchdog. Uh, Establishment candidates are picked for us, and so we get, you know, bad choice A or lesser choice bad B, and so we're trying to make something that makes lying not just punishable, but you can't hide behind the system of doing it. And we're building something that doesn't require permission. So if you talk a little bit about the empowerment of regular citizens within the system we're building.
Yeah, great question. Yeah, because fundamentally, what we're building is citizen-owned system. So it's like something that, like, us as Fink, we're not going to own it. Big tech can't own it. Party gatekeepers can't own it. You, as a citizens, truly own it. For example, right now you could join our hub.futureis.org and become a future owner of this platform. Without even putting money into it. Every American will be able to opt into one share of having owning this technology. It's really about American citizen oversight and control, that, like, the masses need to be able to control this, because even if, like, one nonprofit controls it, like eventually they can get corrupted with, or they could get power hungry, influence hungry, money hungry. And we've seen nonprofits, just because the nonprofit is supposed to be what it is doesn't always mean that's how it ends up. There's certain guardrails, but they, the whole system is doesn't work anymore, so they get around those guardrails. um so we're building something that has citizen oversight, and then also, to your point, like, it's all about decentralization and democratization. Decentralization, democratization, yeah. So like, instead of those 6 companies that own 90% of TV media, we want to build a network of like hundreds, eventually thousands of independent journalists. Now, these independent journalists in some ways are just average Americans. They've learned to capitalize on independent media, or social media. To some extent, you might think of them as not average Americans, but there's it's a more of a blurred line closer to you than like somebody that's been millionaire their whole lives and like live in a lofty perch or whatever. But then also, the beauty about like journalists, influencers, podcasters, is that when you're famous through social media, you're accountable to the masses. You're accountable to your followers. And that's such a difference between, like, that's what a big difference between like an influencer and a celebrity. Now, politicians, media people, they fall in like the celebrity camp. Now, celebrities, they rise to fame because somebody more powerful than them chose them to rise into fame. An actor is famous because they were in their first movie that got them in their breakout circumstance. And like, yeah, they have to have talent, but you could be talented and never be discovered. But with the influencer side, it's organic growth. It's you got follower by follower to be excited about something that you're offering. And granted, yeah, there's a lot of superficial influencers. I'm not saying it's all the most serious and substantial, but they are, whether it is superficial or not, they are accountable to the people. An example I always bring up is like, there's been these scenarios where like an influencer was sponsoring a shampoo, and then people found out they never even tried the shampoo, and there were consequences. That person lost their fame for like a couple of years, if ever. And that's happened multiple times. So they're accountable that if they mess up with the people, they have to apologize. They have to earn your trust in order to keep their position, as a journalist, influencer, podcaster, just being a trusted voice. They have to earn that with you. So that's part of the accountability as well. So if you have independent journalists, they are more accountable. If they keep lying and they're moving you in the wrong direction, eventually they're gonna flop. And especially the way we're gonna build the infrastructure with a rating system and accountability, that you get to rate those journalists. How honest are they? How partisan are they? How objective are they? That kind of stuff. So right front and center, there'll be these mechanisms that keep them accountable. So and it's the same that how we would apply to the candidates. That candidates should kind of move more like influencers. And again, that might sound superficial at first, but right now politicians are basically celebrities. So if we move them to at least be influencers, that's an influencer speaks to average people through social media. They respond to comments, and they're accountable to the people that are supporting them. And that is key. So all of this builds this new way of accountability through digital means.
Yeah, so what we're talking about is visibility being the consequence of this system we're building. And I think that applies both to, if you're a bad politician, maybe a good politician, if you're a bad representative of your voter bloc, that visibility should hurt you. But if you're a good politician, right, and you fulfill your promises and you're not taking big money, that visibility benefits you, right? And so that's also something about the influencer, is that there is this constant monitoring of interactions with the general public.
Yeah. Great point. Yeah. That's actually a nice, clean way to say it. It's about the visibility. Yeah, because right now, like, because the way the system really works right now is those good, honest candidates just generally don't get any visibility, because those that have the power don't want them to be a threat. They don't want them as competition. So, those that are doing the small dollar donations and actually want to represent the voters, they're pushed aside because the establishment media doesn't want them to win. The party leaders don't want them as competition. The corporations don't want them regulating them. So they have the negative advantage. They have the disadvantage of visibility of the good they do, and then on the flip side, with the bad of the those that are in the establishment, like we're talking about earlier, there is no visibility there's not as much visibility of the consequences. Again, like if a news outlet is on the opposite party, they're always going to crap on them, whether they're doing good or bad. And then if they're on the same party, they're generally going to say good about that candidate that's in power. It's not always that black and white, but generally it moves in that direction. So kind of in a nutshell, there's not that visibility of like, this is your promise A, and this is how you enact it. This is how you played it out in office. Like, there are people that are even doing that, but they don't get visibility. There's organizations trying to bring that transparency. There's different influencers trying to do that, journalists. But again, all those that are doing actual good, that want transparency and all that, they have very limited visibility, because the establishment, those with the most power and money, don't want that visibility. So we want to build infrastructure and build a network of people, the digital politics network of all these different people, give them the amplification they need, give them the megaphone they need. You're not going to have establishment news. Well, let's plug you into independent journalists. And you're a good candidate. Let's plug you into different like alternative parties and independent coalitions, movements. We want to build the infrastructure that actually empowers the grassroots, empowers the citizens, empowers those that actually want a true democracy, and not those that are just feeding into the concentration of power.
Yeah, and if you apply one level playing field, one system, imagine sunlight. Sunlight lets flowers grow, but it keeps out the mold, right? So whatever a politician brings to the table, this unified effort of up and down lens, really, it just gives visibility to, if you're a crappy politician or if you're a great politician, you reap what you sow in this system.
Yeah.
Awesome. So we'll move on to our final segment, which is where you guys, as average citizens who just want something to change and want to plug in somewhere, we'll talk about that. I'm going to reset the room. So if you're just tuning in, we're Think, and we are upgrading how America chooses its leaders. So we cut through the noise of left versus right, and we ask one simple question. Does this leader serve power, or do they serve you? And that is the lens that we use and how we are building this new system. So if that resonates, we'd love if you share the stream and check us out at hub.futureis.org. So now we're going to go into how all of this, we've named the problem, we've talked about what Think is building. Now, Travis, let's go into how we incorporate that with regular folks who want something better.
Yeah, I mean, this was supposed to just be the closing. Do you want to like throw me one last question?
Yeah, sure. Sorry. So for the closing part of it, when you go onto hub.futureis.org, that is the space we have built where you can actually amplify the voices that you trust. You can plug in organizations, candidates, independent journalists. So as you've been listening to this podcast, if you think, well, yeah, I follow X, Y, and Z, or I really believe in this candidate, that is the space where you plug in those voices and start getting those names in this amplification system that we are building. So you log into hub.futureis.org, you become a citizen architect, and that lets us know that you're part of the mission, you're part of the growth, and that's where you plug in the voices that you trust.
Cool. Yeah. So just as in conclusion here, so you know, so this is where we're at. We have the Digital Politics Hub and also our Discord. It's the hub is where you take action. The hub is our community. So right now we're in the middle of a big build. The Digital Politics Hub is live. The Discord community is growing, and we've got major upgrades dropping in the next few weeks. Right now, like the hub is at its kind of its infancy. Right now, we launched it at the beginning of January. Discord, we're revamping that. So we would like people to come in at this early stage. Links in the bio for both. You're and so right now we're in this growth spurt of like doing the revamp, plugging them in together, adding a little bit more meat to the bones of the hub, and our Discord, revamping our channels. So you could come in, watch things early, and watch it all come to life. And we're over the next couple of weeks and stuff, we're going to have some major advances with that and social media, and just plugging in a wider network. This is all about building our digital politics network, people that want change regardless of their political beliefs. We want to connect people of any side, Republican, Democrat, third party, independent. Doesn't matter if you want money out of politics, you want to actually be represented, you want transparency in government, you want candidates to have consequences for lying on no matter what side of the aisle they are. This network is for you. Join us. And the key is we're not waiting for politicians to fix themselves. We're building the system that makes the truth impossible to hide, and that's the difference. We're not looking for the legislative change. We know that's not going to happen right now. So help us. We're doing something different. We have a new strategy that's going to disrupt the whole system.
Absolutely. So thank you guys for plugging in, and we will see you next week.
Yep, same time next week, 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific, every Wednesday. And we'll see you then. Thank you.